And we're on the road again with Nicholas Chieftain Moran.
Yep.
And we'll talk a bit about amphibious tanks and everything, and also bringing tanks on land. So I read in the field manual, I think it was 35.5 or something from 44, which is basically landing on a hostile shore, that they mentioned specifically when a tank got in contact with seawater that they need, I think, a 6,000 miles or something overhaul and everything very fast and very soon. So seawater has to have a major effect on armored vehicles. And also the other thing, which I have no idea why exactly, they also talked about waterproofed vehicles and that they have to be de-waterproofed.
They do. So when you think about tanks getting in contact with seawater, there's two ways that this would happen really. One is, as I say, when you're doing an amphibious assault. So you get off the LST, you go into 5 feet of water or whatever, you got the snorkels and so on. But the other one was when you were shipping the stuff across the Atlantic or the Pacific. You know, especially in January or February, there is going to be seawater is going to get onto the tanks, especially if they're deck cargo. So not everything was down in the hold. And before a tank would be, or before anything would be put onto a ship, they would waterproof it for shipping.
Okay.
And I have seen reports at the other end that either the waterproofing was incorrectly done and the tank was damaged, or the de-waterproofing, which is supposed to be done at the port of debarkation, was not correctly done. It got shipped to the field troops who assumed that it was correctly done, and then the tank would break down again. So there's two different places that simply shipping the tank over can cause trouble.
What is waterproofing? What does it do that it's so invasive in a way that can cause that much problems?
You basically have to do a lot of sealant of everything to stop the salt from getting in. It's basically salt water is the problem. Saltwater corrosion. And the salt will also not just corrode, but it'll also apparently conduct electricity. You get short circuits after it solidifies or crystallizes. And all of a sudden you got a salt bridge between wire A and wire B.
Okay, that makes way more sense now.
And you also want to make sure that no water gets into the lubrication systems. You don't want water mixed in with your oil and the final drives and so on. So you want to make damn sure that the screws, the plugs that you use, okay, you can't see the screws, the plugs that you use to fill your oil levels, your lubrication levels are absolutely sealed. So that would have to be done there. And similarly, there is a level of waterproofing that has to be done for an amphibious assault. And quite what the difference is between that and shipping waterproofing, I'm not entirely sure. I have not looked into the specifications. But you know that there is going to have to be some additional sealing that needs to be done if you're going to go into 8 to 10 feet of water before you go ashore.
So basically it's pulling out all the seals and all the other stuff as well again, so that the tank can fully operate.
Basically, and be easily maintained again. As another example of the shipping problem, are you familiar with the mystery of the comb on the front of a Sherman?
The comb?
All right. On the lower right corner of the front hull of a Sherman, you're going to see something that looks like a series of coat hooks, or maybe a saw blade, or something like that. They're about yay long, or they stick out about yay far, and it's usually a piece of metal, a blade of metal about yay long with these teeth on it. And it's called a comb, and for years people had forgotten what the hell it was for, because nobody could come up with any sort of rational understanding as to what this thing did. Because you wouldn't hang things on it in combat, or you could hang things on it in combat, but why would you? You'd hang it. You got plenty of other things to hang off of. And there was no weapon that you would mount on it. There was no attachment that you could put on it. And it turned out its sole function was to hold the brakes in place when it was on a ship. You would put cables through. You would tie them to the driver's control handles. There would be a pulley up behind the driver's position head. And again, you got to look for it because you don't normally think about this, but there was a pulley up there. The cable would then go forward through the vision port, through the periscope, onto the outside of the tank at the front slope, and then you could use the comb to hold the cables in place. And this was how you would apply the brakes and release the brakes when you were towing this tank around, because you couldn't get into the tank otherwise because of the size of the ship, the amount of room you didn't have around the ship. And that was a wonderful example of how we just forgot something. And I think it was like a quartermaster manual somebody was digging around in about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less. I said, oh, that's what this thing is for. So, again, I've always said that the most important part of a Sherman is the lifting eye, because without that lifting eye, the tank is utterly useless.
The lifting eye?
It's when you're going to load the tank into a ship.
Yeah.
You have the crane, has the ropes and chains come down, and you hook them onto something on the tank.
Ah, okay.
The hoops, the lifting hoops that are welded on. If you don't have an ability to lift it into the tank, your tank isn't going to do into the ship. Your tank's not going to do you any good.
Yeah, that's the issue with the U.S. forces all the time. This is pointed out in my logistics video about the Wehrmacht. That comparing the Wehrmacht with the U.S. Army to a certain degree, or the U.S. forces, because the Wehrmacht is the army. The Kriegsmarine and the Luftwaffe is a different thing, because you have to ship everything before you can see action, unless you're invading Mexico or Canada.
Yeah, last time we tried Canada, it didn't work out too well. And,
so,
well, I guess we did want to get one against Mexico. But so again, even in World War II, though, I don't think logistics wasn't a known art before World War II. So you got that famous quote from the Pacific. Some flag officer would say, going, I don't know what this logistics stuff is that MacArthur's always on about, or Marshall is always, whoever it is. I don't know what this stuff is that he's always on about, but whatever the hell it is, give me lots of it.
I mean, from what I read, at least what it's written in the Cambridge History of the First World War, they noted basically that the logistics were figured out in the First World War for all major forces, and that the Second World War was mostly a continuation of it. So the modern logistics, according to them, go back to the First World War in that regard, and that actually I think the quote is that all major forces manage them. So not particularly sure if I agree here, but again, that's the thing. If logistics don't work, you see it rather soon, and it is.
Well, I think it's the difference between was it being performed and was it understood by all. So if you got a flag officer saying, I don't know what this logistics stuff is, because all he cares about is that when he fills out when his G4 fills out the requisition form, it shows up.
Yeah.
But how it actually gets there, I can't remember if this was yourself I was talking to about the Army Industrial War College. I was talking with somebody about it, and the U.S. after World War I, they set up. It's now called the Eisenhower War College or something like that. But back then, it was the Army Industrial War College, and it was designed to teach majors and colonels about how you gear an economy for war.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that was the Germans were lacking.
I don't think any other country really had something like that.
No, from what I remember, Creveld in his article in Wehrmacht Mythos und Realität points out that I think the US, the French, and I think also the British had something along those lines.
The French didn't understand actually the way they worked.
Whereas the Germans mostly ignored it, but they were, for instance, Wagner. No, not Wagner. Thomas, General Thomas. He actually, I think he actually did a talk in the United States about this, along those lines, that the Germans ignored this too much. But he was sidelined later on. I did a video. He's considered by some as one of the most unsuccessful German generals in that regards, because he was looking at the whole industrial complex as well.
Yeah, that's not very popular.
Yeah, especially with the Germans, they were like, don't concern yourself with economy and politics.
Well, even at the low level. So we were having that discussion a while back about the organization of a tank company.
Yeah.
I had expressed surprise
that you didn't see an office.
That I didn't see an XO. And it was kind of like in the US, the XO is responsible primarily for a lot of the logistics and admin and so on, as well as being the second in command. And you're not going to become an officer commanding without having been an XO first, and it's the same at the battalion level usually, which means that any officer is going to have a hard experience base upon which to draw upon, so that he knows when, the difficulties of supply and repair and so on, give him that sense of perspective. But from what I was gathering, the German army in World War II didn't do this.
I actually read a bit more on this, or on the side, also in Creveld, but in fighting power, and I think he noted that a lot of positions that were filled in the US Army with officers were filled with NCOs on the German. I think it was on a higher level of command. I think it was on division command, on the division level, not division command. And he noted that it was rather low on officers on the German side, but I think they had way more NCOs. And this might go back to the Versailles Treaty, because they were very limited in their officers, and so they had a way more NCOs, and they specifically trained everyone, I think, to be able to fill a role 2 levels higher up to form this. So hard to tell. We will have to look at the Imperial German army first to see if there was a major shift here and how this was related. Creveld didn't point out anything in regards to the Versailles Treaty, and I will try to put the quote down there if I find it again. So
it does make
it's
sense
quite
as to
complicated.
why, but the net result though is still the same, that you have all these German officers who don't have any experience at the actual grunt work of what it takes for logistics and supply and maintenance.
Yeah, for them it was all tactics and operations. This was the main focus of the Germans all the time. Win the war fast, and like the intelligence, as pointed out in the video about Gehlen, was not regarded very highly. And basically the intelligence officer was subordinated, but also it was basically, he was for the operations officer.
Yeah.
So yeah, they had a general different approach to logistics, and as I pointed out why the Wehrmacht logistics were not particularly good. The Germans always won despite logistics, despite bad logistics, and Gross particularly pointed out that the Germans were really good at improvising, and the logistic guys usually improvise. So he said conjure it up basically. He said something, I think, with Magisch, or they could make it happen usually. And while that worked till Barbarossa, let's put it that way, then yeah, if your stage is too big, then your magician doesn't work anymore. Let's put it that way. So I think we covered that topic with the waterproofing.
Believe it or not, we actually wanted to talk about something entirely different. We just made this a logistics video.
Yeah, which this just happened. So, but I have another one for you, but this will be the next video. So thank you very much, Chieftain.
All right, well, from Central Ohio, take care.
Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye.